the Chamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit, Neye AKANFO NANASOM, Da Medinde Ojirafo Kwesi Radnan Pata Akan, Afamuman and Maruka Tipi Mu Ojirafo, Ojiraman Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AKANFO NANASOM Akan Ancestral Religion Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Radnan Pata Akan, Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojirama, the purified nation Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit in the Western Hemisphere. Did I say we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast once again. We're opening up the chat room right now. If you have a question or a comment and you'd like to interact in the chat room, just you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you must sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk so that you can interact. If you have a question or a comment, phone line, simply hit the number 1. We can see that your hand is raised, and we can interact with you on the phone line. So the chat room is open. We're going to put a couple of links in the chat room dealing with the publications we will be addressing tonight. For the individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis on AKANFO NANASOM, which is Joda. Monday nights, we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Nanasom, of ancestral religion, specifically dealing with the Akan expression. We are Akan, of course, number 1, but secondly, because of the misinformation that has been propagated regarding Akan culture, cosmology, the nature of the Yabosom, the deities, the nature of the Nananom Samanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, the nature of Nyamewa and Nyame, the great mother and great father, the supreme being called Amenet and Amen in ancient Kanit and Kemet, the nature of the spiritual forces in creation, the ancestral spirits in relation to us, in relation to our Akra soul, Akrawa, the soul, the divine consciousness, as well as within us, the nature of the Bra, the life, divine living energy within us, and so forth, the nature of the deities that govern the 7 days of the week, the Akradim Bosom, how they animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7 days of the week. So a number of different things that we deal with on AKANFO NANASOM, including our ancestral religious practice of AKANFO NANASOM, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion carried from ancient Kanat, a title of ancient Nubia, to the western part of the continent, into the empire of Ghana, Akana, a couple of thousand years ago. And then when some of our people migrated further south into the forest belt in the regions of today's Ghana and Ivory Coast, we continued Akan or Akana civilization. A few hundred years ago, some of our people were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Mmusuo Kese, the Great Perversity, the Enslavement era. We carried our Akan ancestral religion with us into North America. It became known as the Undu or Hoodoo tradition, which goes back to the Akan language Undu, which goes all the way back to ancient Kanat Nubia, which is also called the Undu land and the Undu people, and so forth, called Hoodoo popularly in North America, Obia in Jamaica, Winti in Suriname, but we maintain Akan ancestral religion. So we deal with all of that on AKANFO NANASOM on Joda Monday nights. Tuesday nights, Benada, Abenada, we have Ojira, which means purification. That is the name of the broadcast. We deal with purification as the operationalizing of Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ancestral religion. So we don't just deal with the Akan expression of ancestral religion, but we deal with ancestral religion, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion in general, no matter what form it takes wherever we exist in the world. On Ojirada, Purification Day, Benada, Abenada, Tuesday night, Jira, Purification, operationalizes ancestral religion. Ancestral religion, in essence, is defined properly as the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and therefore realign ourselves with divine order, restore balance to our lives. So the expansion and contractive poles of ancestral religion are the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. Through that process, we align every thought, every intention, and every action, every moment of every day with divine order. We have the capacity to do so, to align with divine order, and to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions when we make mistakes. So we show how that impacts every aspect of our lives. Our culture is the incorporation and acceptance of order and the rejection or hatred of disorder. That is our way of life as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. So when we seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day, and we have ritual means by which we can realign ourselves with order as well as incorporate order every moment of every day, then we show through life experience, through functioning, how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. So this is what we deal with Ojira. We deal with these various expressions of ancestral religion, texts from ancient Kemet, ritual practices from ancient Kemet and Kanat, Egypt and Nubia, from ancestral traditions all across the continent and into the Western Hemisphere as we manifested these ancient traditions through our blood circles, spirit-genetic blood circles, Hoodoo, which is the Akan tradition, Juju, which is the Yoruba tradition, Vodun, which is the Fon and Ebe tradition, Grigri, which is the Bambara tradition, Wanga, which is the Gullah tradition amongst the Albambo in that constellation. Various expressions of ancestral religion we have carried within our blood circle. We are not dependent on anyone outside of our blood circle, outside of our locale, to practice our ancestral religion. We're not dependent on anyone on the continent. We're not dependent on anyone outside of us to practice our ancestrally inherited, spirit-genetic, transmitted, transcarnationally transmitted ancestral religious practice. So we deal with that in detail on Ojirada Purification Day. On Awukuda, Akuada Wednesday nights, we have Egwa Marketplace Day. We showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving the community in a positive capacity, and who also maintain and convey their ancestral religious values, our ancestral religious values, in the context of that service to the community. So we've had a number of individuals come on to interview, talk about their business, organization, and institution, how their philosophy of service is impacted and aligned with our ancestral religious values. We have published the Okom Economic Development Model, which is an economic development model rooted in our ancestral religious values. In that process is a holistic approach to economic development for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. In that publication, which you can download from the website, you'll see that one of the major strategies is to starve the beast and feed the pride. And we have the Starve the Beast and Feed the Pride operation, the Okom Economic Development Model operation, where we target one Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks of optimal capital infusion. That means you make a decision on a weekly basis to determine what funds you would have wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then you starve the beast and feed the pride. You reallocate those funds away from the white businesses to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution of the week. We do that when one person redirects such funds, $5 or $10 on a weekly basis to the business of the week. That's an infusion of $10 or so to the business of the week. When 1,000 people engage that process, that's an infusion of $10,000 into a black business in the course of a week. Taking those funds, reallocating them from our enemies, the whites and their offspring, directly into a black business that allows them to expand, to hire within the community, serve us at a greater capacity, meet all of our needs, and so forth. If we do not engage that process, then by default, we leave that $10,000+ in the hands of the whites and their offspring, whether it's white Europeans, white Americans, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Arabs, white Hindus, white Asians, the whites and their offspring, AGYAPADE, the spirits of disorder, divinely hated, prohibited spirits of disorder, the whites and their offspring who incarnate in that fashion. These are our enemies, physically and spiritually, without exception. If we do not engage the process prior, then by default, we leave those funds in the hands of our enemies, and by default, we are funding our own oppression. So this is the reason why we engage that process. This is what we deal with on our HOODOO Wednesday night. And you'll see on the Okon Economic Development Model page the various organizations, businesses, institutions, and so forth that we have interviewed on the show, their websites, their links, the links to their interviews and so forth, and you'll also see the business of the week as well. So on Yauda, which is also Yada Abada Thursday, we have Amain Sim, Affairs of the Nation, which is our new broadcast, where we deal with specific issues that are affecting Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit population, Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere, and our approach rooted in our ancestral religious values on how to deal with specific issues that are beneficial to us as Ojiraman, as the purified nation. Now, for individuals who are unaware, an announcement, we are having our Ojiraman Apashe conference. Ojiraman means the purified nation, which is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Apashe means festival, observance. Ojiraman Apashe, the festival or conference for Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. This conference will be taking place in Washington, D.C., June 24th, which is a FIDA, a Friday. It's from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free conference, open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. Of course, we'll have a marketplace, an AGYA marketplace throughout the course of the day. You can shop with Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit vendors. We will also have a number of presentations. We will be presenting on Amaniye, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit nationism, the purification of nationalism for Ojiraman. We also have, we just added a presenter, Dr. Agya, who will be talking about education with regard to homeschooling, network support systems for educational processes within Ojiraman. We need to have support systems, whether it's after-school programs, Saturday, day schools, and so forth, tutoring programs, manhood, womanhood, training, and so forth. For those individuals who are still caught in the public school system, we need to have those support systems that are Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African-centered. Dr. Agya has vast experience with regard to curriculum building, training, and so forth, educating youth of various ages, and she'll be presenting on an educational support system for Ojiraman. We also have Dr. Asivi Adiro, a naturopathic physician. She'll be dealing with the holistic healthcare system for Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. We have Inna Njideka Karmo, who is the owner and guardian director of Pan-African or Fabohodie Suya, and what that is Pan-African online co-op classes. She has an educational system, has an institution. Any one of our people anywhere in the Western Hemisphere around the world can log into the Pan-African Institution online, sign up for courses each semester. We have an educational institution in place that can reach any Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit individual anywhere in the world. We need to be able to reach our people right where we are right now. We do not have time to wait for institutions to be built. We have access to institutions that have already been formulated, and Fabohodie Suya is one of those. Inna Njideka Karma will be presenting on that. And we have more presentations, and we're going to confirm one more speaker. But we're going to be moving forward in that fashion. We're going to put the link in the chat room right quick. For those who've not seen the link, Mojo Mayn and AKYISAN page. Put that in there right quick. Okay. And then we also put the link in the chat room for the Nhama page, our publications page. All right. So that the conference will be happening June 24th, FIDA Friday. It's an all-day event. Presentations throughout the day, video presentations as well as live presentations and so forth. Egua Marketplace all day long. You can register when you go to the Mojo Mayn AKYISAN page. You can register there. We also have a few spaces left, a few vending spaces left. If you would like to vend, we provide a 6-foot table and 2 chairs. The vending fee for the entire day is $30, so you can get all of the information. And you can download the vending registration application from the Mojo Mayn AKYISAN page. All right. So, the topic for tonight, Mojo and AGYAPADE, Akan origin of Mojo and the Jack Ball in Hoodoo. Now, we've had a series of broadcasts properly defining and identifying the Hoodoo tradition as the Akan tradition in North America. Prior to our publishing this information, publishing our book, HOODOO People, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans in North America, Akan custodians of Hoodoo from ancient Hoodoo in Dunuland, Kanit, Nubia. Prior to publishing that, and our article, Akan origin of the term Hoodoo, and our book, HOODOO Mayn, HOODOO Nation journal, as well as the AKYISAN, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Ancestral Religious Reversion Journal. The article there talking about the origin of the terms Hoodoo and Juju and Grigri and Vodun and so forth, and Wanga. Prior to our publishing this information, it was unknown that the Hoodoo tradition is the Akan tradition. The Hoodoo tradition was misrepresented as an Afro-American folk magic tradition, just basic little folk magic that was intertwined with pseudo-Native American magic and so-called European magic that is totally inaccurate. Just as the Vodun tradition is the Fon and Ewe people's tradition, as they brought that tradition into the Western Hemisphere and into North America. Louisiana Vodou, New Orleans Vodou, and Vodou in the South, coming from the Vodou tradition of the Fon and Ewe people, primarily in Togo and Benin. In the same fashion, the Hoodoo tradition is the Akan tradition brought by Akan people from Ghana, Ivory Coast regions into North America. We showed that etymologically, we showed that cosmologically, and we've showed the various practices and the various positions that you find, ritual positions, clerical positions, so to speak. All of them you can find with the proper name in the Hoodoo tradition. We've talked about, just recently, we talked about the Gufa doctor. Goofer, often they'll spell it Goofer, like Goofer dust, Goofer doctor, and so forth. We pronounced it Gufa doctor, Gufo doctor, the healer, the healeress, the conjurer, the conjureress, and so forth. The Gufa doctor comes from the Kumfo man and the Kumfo woman in the Akan tradition. That is a class of priests and priestesshood. The Okumfo, also spoken Kumfo, Gumfo, and Gufa in Hoodoo, the Akan tradition in North America. We've talked about the Hoodoo man, the Hoodoo woman, and so forth. The Hoodoo man comes from the Unduma people in the Akan tradition, those who give medicine. They're conjurers, they're healers, and so forth. The term Hoodoo means medicine, from the term Undu in Akan, also Undu in ancient Kanit, Nubia. It also means becoming heavy with the spirit. The term Kanche in the Akan tradition means to utter incantations to bring forth the spirit. That term becomes Kanje in hoodoo in North America and mispronounced conjure in North America, but it's actually kanche, which is an Akan term. We talked about the term hate, meaning a spirit that's aroused. It comes from the term hinti in Akan, which means aroused, talking about a spirit as well as forces in nature and so forth. So we've given a number of different examples of these various different terms, ritual practices, the cosmological foundation for these various terms, how they have been maintained in the hoodoo tradition. The same is true of the term and practice and implement the mojo as well as the jack or so-called jack ball in hoodoo. These are terms that come directly from the Akan tradition and the Akan language, rooted in our cosmology, in our lived experience. So we're going to go into detail to prove that, showing exactly, once again, that these various practices. We also talked about previously the Akuaba doll, the Undu Akuaba, the hoodoo doll, the hoodoo doll baby. We did a broadcast on that and published a document dealing with that. That's the same Akuaba doll in the Akan tradition. We talked about the rabbit's foot and so forth, and how the Adanko, the rabbit Adanko and Adankowa, is a root worker, is a healer in the Akan tradition. And this whole notion of the rabbit's foot and so forth, dealing with hoodoo, comes directly from the Akan tradition, and that goes all the way back to ancient Kemet, when you have the male and female Adanko, Adankowa, rabbit or hare divinity. Body of a human being, head of a hare. Sometimes the entire deity is in the form of the hare, that sacred animal totem for that divinity, male and female. That has the same name in ancient Kemet that it has in the Akan language. So we've gone through a number of different things. We're going to get into the mojo and the jack ball tonight. So, when people look at the etymology of the term mojo, they don't know exactly where it comes from. They've seen similar terms in the Congo tradition, Congo language, and others, and they assume it may have come from that. We're going to prove tonight, of course, that it comes directly from the Akan language. The term Mogya becomes Mogya in English, the way it's pronounced by Akan speakers in English, from Mogya to Moja, and then Mojo in English. Now, first we're going to read some information about the term Mogya or Mojo and what it generally has to deal with, and then we're going to go into some detail. In the publication, Mojo Working, the Old African American Hoodoo System by Dr. Katrina Hazard, and this is a book that we is talking about the development of hoodoo in North America at the time of the enslavement of our people, as well as through that process when we freed ourselves and so forth, and then after emancipation and into the current day when the whites in our offspring began to market in these pseudo hoodoo practices and oils and everything else. Hoodoo has nothing to do with the whites in our offspring. It has nothing to do with pseudo-Native Americans. It has nothing to do with pseudo-European magic. It is purely Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, and so forth. And this is one of the books that we do recommend. Mojo Working, the Old African American Hoodoo System by Dr. Katrina Hazard. And she goes into detail about a number of different things, including the mojo. So you look on page 64 in that particular publication. You can purchase that publication on Google Books or Amazon.com. You can get the ebook version. You can download, you can purchase it and download it and read it immediately, or there's a softcover version as well. Get on page 64. And she says, on the other hand, the spiritual controlling aspect of the tradition, talking about hoodoo, was severely maligned, denigrated, misunderstood, and sometimes feared by outsiders because of the apparent power it held over bondsmen to incite as well as to strengthen the spirit of rebellion and individual resistance. Hoodoo was approached cautiously by some whites. There is ample evidence that conjurers played an important role in slave rebellion and individual slave resistance. Frederick Douglass was one of the better-known bondsmen who spoke of their encounters with conjure In his book, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass, he tells the story of being given a packet of magical roots by an older African-born slave named Sandy. Though Douglass doubted the root pack's efficacy, its purpose was apparently fulfilled, and Douglass was never whipped by any man ever again. Go to the next page. The protective amulet or charm known as the Mojo bag, the Mojo hand, hoodoo bag, hoodoo hand, juju bag, root bag, conjure pack, gopher bag, jack, Toby, lucky hand or package, all these various names, mentioned by a considerable number of freedmen as significant in their life experience, was universally carried and understood in the slave community. Similarly, Lewis Hughes, a slave in Mississippi and Virginia, carried one type of protection, a small leather bag to ward off whipping. The charm's magic or power, quote-unquote magic or power, was usually encased in several layers of either cloth or leather and wrapped with either leather cord, hemp string, or twine, so as not to be exposed. Given to him by an older slave, Hughes' bag was probably similar to 1,000 others carried by slaves throughout the South. We are left with this account. And then, she quotes, custom in those days for slaves to carry hoodoo bags. It was handed from generation to generation. That's key. And though it was one of the superstitions of a barbarous ancestry, of course, this individual was brainwashed, it was still very generally tenaciously held by all classes. I carried a little bag, which I got from an older slaver who claimed that it had power to prevent anyone who carried it from being whipped. It was made of leather and contained roots, nuts, pins, and some other things. Many of the servants were thorough believers in it and carried these bags all the time. Now, in traditional West African religion, the amulet, in addition to leather, could be housed in the sacred cloth, seeds, insect pods, seashells, snail shells, woven raffia, animal horns, as well as small and large calabash gore. In addition, the mojo might be a double or triple bag. That is 2 or 3 bags tied together and with other attachments such as bones, whistles, bells, thorns, or plant parts. Other types of protective fabrications, such as the type requiring the tying of knots directly on the body, later retreat into isolated pockets and nearly disappear. Tying of knots and the making of protective packets were widespread religious practices in traditional West and Central West African religion, and would become staples in African American black belt hoodoo practice that will continue into the 21st century. And then she gives another account by Mary Alicia Owens in 1891, records a former slave conjure doctor's use of string and knots in making a trickin bag and luck ball and so forth, into some detail about that. We're talking about this mojo bag, this mojo which is used to hold medicine that is protecting the person from various kinds of things. It's a healing. It has healing implications, but also protective implications. One of the keys is talking about being passed from generation to generation. That's one of the key pieces that is often overlooked. I'm going to read another specific piece just to give a little bit more context. On page, let me give you the page once again, 67 of Mojo Working, Dr. Hazard. Most authentic old tradition mojos were baptized in liquid spirits and tailored to the client's specific needs. No two were exactly alike. There were no generic mojo bags, as one would later find dominating the spiritual marketplace with these fake marketeers of hoodoo. In the construction of a protective mojo bag, for example, the conjurer, root doctor will consult with the client to understand his daily schedule, where he was likely to be, where he was likely to need protection, and from whom or what. Then the specifics of location, schedule, and personality will be fabricated into the amulet using the principles of physical power, speed, and territoriality. Specific instructions for the care, maintenance, and interaction with the mojo accompanied the amulet were given to the client, and so forth. And there are ritual prayers and so forth that are associated with that. Now, we're talking about something that's specific to the person, passed down intergenerationally. It carries the power of the individual's spirit and so forth, and their specific peculiar energy to ward off negative energies and also to incorporate the things that they need to incorporate. Remember that ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. Incorporate what you need, repel, hate, reject, repulse what you do not need. It's like taking in an in-breath to pull in the oxygen and nutrients and eating food and taking in the nutrients that you need, but then eliminating or expelling that which you do not need that would otherwise cause you harm. So this is what we're dealing with this mojo bag. Now, we also want to get down and give a definition real quick of the Jack Ball. And you can get this in the same publication on page 207. Jack, J-A-C-K, this is the way it's pronounced now. Another name for a type of hoodoo amulet or mojo bag. Jack Ball, this term has two usages. One for the divination device, similar to the walking boy, in which a weighted mojo ball was suspended from a string about 18 to 20 inches long and used the same way as the walking boy, another divination practice, form of oracular divination in hoodoo. The other use for the term Jack Ball is to designate a type of amulet carried for protection and love. As in, I got my Jack Ball with me tonight. And then she mentions the African-American dance known as Balling the Jack is a hoodoo reference. So you have a Jack Ball, which is an amulet, which is a container of medicine dealing with ritual practice, protection, and also incorporating spiritual knowledge that you need to engage life in a harmonious way. That's the Jack Ball or Jack. And then you also have the mojo bag, or sometimes just called the mojo, which is also a container of medicine, spiritual power used to protect the person and also inform the person. These things are passed down intergenerationally, and they are unique to the person based on their personality. Now, where does that come from? And we're going to give you some details. I'm going to give you a link to our publication, The Okra Complex, The Soul of AKANFO. And that's one of our publications dealing with the nature of the soul, term Ka, and Ka has the male and female terms for soul, divine consciousness, in ancient Kemetic called Kra, and Krawa in Akan, also called the Okra and Okra in Akan tradition. So we talk about the nature of the soul. It is a deity that dwells in the head region, the male divinity if you're male, the female divinity if you're female. That deity in your head region that always force is pulling you in the right direction, whether you follow that force or not. That is the soul's divine consciousness. Encoded within that force is the specific function you are to execute in creation. Just like your brain is an entity, an organ, a specific entity with a specific form that has all of the blueprints of how your body should function. The same is true of the spirit's brain, a force in the head region that regulates the functions of the other spiritual organs within the body. It's like your brain is an organ in the head region that regulates the functions of the various organs and glands and systems in the body. The physical brain has the physical blueprint of how your body should operate. All the signals are sent back and forth from the brain to the rest of the body. The spirit's brain in your spirit body is in the head region. That is the Okra, the soul, a divinity that you can communicate with, male divinity if you're male, female divinity if you're female. That deity will communicate directly with you and show you what your function is in creation, how to align yourself with that function, and if you get off track, how to realign yourself with that divine function. That's your personal divinity. That Ka or Kra, that Kaet or Krawa is a child of the great Ka, and Ka is the soul or divine consciousness of Amunet and Amen, the supreme being. Now, we show that woven within the brain, the fourfold division of the brain, the cerebral cortex, the right and left hemisphere, governing consciousness and activities and knowledge and so forth. And then you have the cerebellum, two hemispheres as well, dealing with motor movement and equilibrium and power movements and so forth. In the same fashion, in the cerebral cortex area of the spirit brain, you have the Nkran and Krabya, your divine function. What are you to execute in creation? What kind of function do you have? What kind of cell in the great divine body are you? That's wired within your spirit's brain. If you're naturally inclined towards defensive functions or immune system functions or policing actions, military and so forth, that means you're a cell within the immune system, the military system within the body. That's why you're naturally inclined to eradicate disorder. It's like your immune system cells are naturally inclined to eradicate cancerous cells in the body. That's their function. If you're an immune system cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, that is wired within your head, and you're naturally inclined towards those kinds of functions in Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit society. If you're a healer or a healeress, you're naturally inclined towards that kind of function, like the excretory system or renal system in the body, the kidneys and the bladder and ureters and so forth, regulating fluid balance in the body, regulating electrolyte balance and mineral balance in the body, bringing that healing effect and so forth. If you're a child of those divinities that govern the renal system, divine renal system in the great divine body, then you'll have a natural inclination towards some kind of healing practices because that's the kind of function that's wired within your head. We have a specific function that's like in the cerebral cortex. The power that we wield to execute our function. We're not just given a blueprint of what we should do, knowledge of what we should do and how we should do it, but we're also given power to execute. If you have a fiery function like an immune system function, and you're naturally inclined towards seeking out disorder or cancer within the community and killing those cancerous cells in the community that are causing people problems because you're an immune system cell, that's your charge, that's your function. You have knowledge of that, it's wired within you. But you also must be given the kind of fiery energy capable of executing that kind of function. You're not just given the function, you're given the power as well. The function is the male and female aspect of that function in Akan is called Nkran and Krabya. The male and female aspect of that specific configuration of power is called the She and the Shebia. She meaning to fix or to arrange, to make something happen. So you're given a She and Shebia, that natural force of compulsion and impulsion to wield the energy you have to support your function. You have a function, but you also have the power to execute that function. We are descendant of a metric clan and a patric clan. There are deities that govern the metric clan and the patric clan. This is going back hundreds of years, thousands of years, the last time you lived on Earth, on the continent, before enslavement happened, when you were living on the continent, and at some point you died and your descendants or you yourself were forced into North America during the enslavement era. You had children and so forth, but then you died and you became an ancestor or an ancestress. You watch your children grow up and they pour libation to you as an ancestor and ancestress. They have children, their children grow up, which are your grandchildren. They pour libation to you. They grow up, they get married. They meet somebody, get married, and they have children. You see your generation after generation, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren growing up in North America. You're an ancestor and ancestress in the spirit realm. At some point, one of your great-great-great-great-grandchildren grows up, gets married, it's time for you to return into the world. When they copulate, they draw your spirit into the womb of the female. 40 weeks later, you're born into the world for the first time in hundreds of years. You're the same Afurakani or Afuraitkaitnit spirit that lived on the continent in your previous existence, and now you have returned through your descendant, and you have returned into the world. If your descendants had gone through some form of torture and rape at some point, and the blood circle was polluted at one point, and they became a little bit lighter brown, then you're going to be born into a body that's a little bit lighter brown than it would have been if there wasn't rape on the plantation. But you're the exact same spirit operating through a physical body. If you're an Akan spirit, an Akan person living in an Akan area, you're the same Akan spirit who has returned. You may come through a lighter brown body because of the wars that took place in our blood circles, but you're still the same Afurakani or Afuraitkaitnit Akan spirit. You are a Yoruba person with the same Yoruba spirit returning into the womb, and so forth. Prior to that, you being forced into North America, forced into enslavement, dying in this region and so forth, and having children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and all of that. Prior to that, you were living on the continent a few hundred years ago. At some point, you were part of a group. At some point, you were living your culture. You were speaking your ancestral language. You were part of a Patrick clan and Matric clan. And the deities that govern the Patrick clan and Matric clan are connected to you. These forces in nature, those that govern your Patrick clan ancestresses and ancestors, that energy is part of you. Those, the divinity that governs your Matric clan ancestresses and ancestors, that female divinity, that energy is within you. The spiritual force that animates the ovum, the spiritual force that animates the sperm cell, the Patrick clan and Matric clan divinity, their energies blend within you. You carry that energy into the world, so therefore you're connected to that force in nature. Even when you died, became an ancestral spirit, was an ancestral spirit for a couple of hundred years, and eventually reincarnated through your descendants in North America and born into the world as we are born into North America today. We're the same spirit that was connected to those same deities from hundreds of years ago. Those same deities are still connected to our spirit bodies now. Notwithstanding what happened on the plantation, on the boats and so forth, and rape and torture, we're the same spirit that entered into the womb from the ancestral realm. These deities were assigned to us before we even got into the womb. So before we even entered into the womb, we were assigned to these Matric clan and Patrick clan forces in nature, and we brought their energy into the womb. The Patrick clan and Matric clan forces that govern us, just like you have DNA from your mother, DNA from your father, carried by the sperm cell and ovum cell of the father and the mother. You have the DNA, which gives your physical characteristics, influences your character to a certain extent, and so forth. In the same fashion, you have spiritual, quote-unquote, DNA, the Patrick clan deity, the Matric clan deity, a specific force in nature that has a certain character. Once that energy gets inside of you, then you manifest that kind of character from the Patrick clan side and the Matric clan side. And that goes into the kind of power you bring into the world. Just like you have certain physiological characteristics that you bring into the world. If your father has the kind of DNA that means you're tall and have a robust figure and so forth, and are a strong line of people, then you're going to carry that kind of power into the world. If on the female side, you have the kind of DNA, your people are engaged in certain kinds of activity, healing practices, and so forth, you're going to bring that kind of character into the world. In the same fashion, the spiritual forces that animate the sperm cell, animate the ovum cell, that govern them, they have a specific functions in creation. That energy is fused within you just when the sperm and ovum unite and fuse together, creating that zygote. Those energies fuse together and blend together and create a unique individual. And you enter into that zygote and you carry that fused energy from the Patrick clan deity to Matric clan deity. They have their own character. They have their own power. They have their own prohibitions. They have their own taboos and so forth. You bring that into the world with you, just like you bring your DNA into the world with the shape of your nose and eyes and so forth, based on what came from your father. what came from your mother. The kind of spiritual power you're giving, the specific spiritual configuration of energy you're giving, whether it's a fiery force or a watery kind of energy you have, or earthy kind of energy you have, or airy kind of energy you have, whatever kind of energy was transmitted to you from the Patriclan and Matriclan deities' energy as they fused, you brought that into the world. You have a specific, unique configuration of that you carry yourself. That energy is what you need to utilize to execute your function in creation, to support that function that you've been given in creation. That energy is crystallized and contained its potency within the ritual amulets and implements that we utilize. So it can be tapped into, so it can be provoked. It's no different than you if you were to speak into your cell phone and record yourself and then show that video later. And people can hear your voice, they can see your image, and they can be impacted by your words and by your spirit and by your energy and what you know and what you want to convey. You've captured a certain aspect of your own energy and essence and sound vibrations and image and so forth in a container to be utilized later to affect a specific result. We do the same thing with shrines, with idols on shrines, with talismans and amulets and so forth. We fuse that energy into these implements, and then we provoke that energy like a battery. That energy is saved, and then we provoke that energy necessary to release that energy to overcome a specific obstacle or give us insight into a specific situation so we can overcome that situation, or incorporate knowledge so we can execute our function in the world in a harmonious way and avoid negative consequences, or if we find ourselves in negative consequences, how to overcome and heal ourselves, protect ourselves, and so forth, and move forward. So this is what we're talking about. So when they talk about the Mojo bag being passed down intergenerationally, then this is what we're dealing with. Now, intergeneration, Mojo bag. Mojo comes from Mogya in the Akan tradition. The term Mogya literally means blood, and it's specifically, in general, dealing with the blood from the mother's side, the Mogya, transmitted transcarnationally from the mother. We are matriclan centered. We receive our inheritance from our mother's side. When we talk about what is our clan, what is our inheritance, we're talking about, in the Akan tradition, for example, there are 7 major matriclans: Mmusuo Kese, the major clan; Asona Abusia, the Asona clan; Adriana clan; Agona clan; Ekoana clan; Drietuo clan; Asinie clan; Oyoko clan; Asakiri, and so forth, and there are subdivisions of these various clans and so forth. These are the major Mmusuo Kese, a major clan, matriclan. You say, who are you descendant of? What is your clan? You're talking about the matriclan. For example, we are from the Asona Abusia, the Asona clan. That's our matriclan and so forth. There are animal totems associated with that. That be the crow, white-crested raven, the Esunu, the elephant, and so forth. Certain kind of owl, certain kind of serpent connected with the Asona Abusia, the Asona clan. Carry a specific kind of energy into the world, just like every other clan has their own energy, animal totem, and so forth, own kind of character. We receive our inheritance, literally, politically, from the matriclan. Your right to rule as a king or a queen mother, Ohimi, Ohima, comes from the matriclan. That's the ruling transmission coming from the mother's blood circle. So Moja in general is talking about the mother's blood, talking about the blood, the matriclan blood. Transmitted spiritually as well as physically. Not only talking about the ovum, but the spiritual force that governs the ovum. Now, when they talk about the Mojo bag and its transcarnational or intergenerational fashion to fit the specific personality or character of the individual, so they carry that on them for protection and so forth. We're going to get into a little bit of of a detail here in the Okra Complex book. We're going to scroll through right quick just so you can see. I'll give you the proper page for that. 1 second. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, here's the number 1 if you're on the phone line. And you can log in as a user in order to interact with the chat. Okay. So, on page 36, we say there, as we said, 7 major Mmusuo great matricircular or matrilineal clans in Akan culture. We mentioned those 7 clans. They are headed up by 7 female abosom. We've been showing ancient Kemet those 7 abosom, often called the 7 Het Heru, so-called Pleiades, represented by the Pleiades star systems, the 7 major stars, these spiritual forces that animate those star systems, that penetrate the energy of Earth and so forth, animate Earth as well. These 7 female divinities are the heads of the 7 ancestresses that govern our 7 matriclans in our Akan culture. Then you have 12 patriclans governed by 12 divinities, male divinities on the father's side. You see the 12 attendants of Sa or Orion in ancient Kemet. Those 12 stars, the spiritual forces that animate those aspects of creation. You find those are the 12 major divinities in our Akan culture. We even show them in ancient Kemet, the 7 female deities, and right next to them are the 12 male deities, the matriclan divinities, and the patriclan divinities. The same 7 matriclan deities in our Akan culture, patriclan deities in our Akan culture. We show both of those. We show the papyrus of Ani and the names of these different divinities and so forth. And as we said earlier, and you see those on page 36 and page 37. Now, we say the energy of the patriclan deity, the Agya bosom, and the matriclan deity, the Abusia bosom, is that which is wielded by the Shein Shebia respect. As we said, the brain has the cerebral cortex on the top, right and left hemisphere, dealing with knowledge, understanding, cognition, and all of that. But then the cerebellum in the back, the 2 right and left hemispheres of the cerebellum deal with power, motor movement, and so forth. That's the physical brain. The spirit brain has the same 4-fold division. The Nkra and Akrabi is like the cerebral cortex, right and left hemisphere, dealing with the knowledge of who you are, what your function in the world is, what kind of cell in the great divine body you are, what are you supposed to do, how are you supposed to function. In the cerebellum of the Okra, the soul, is the Shein Shebia, the spiritual forces, the male and female aspects of that energy you will to support your function so you can execute your function. If you just had knowledge of who you are but you didn't have any power, you're like a paraplegic who knows everything that they can see and they can look around and they can understand, but they have no power to move. You have a function, you have knowledge woven into your cerebral cortex physically and into your Nkra and Krabia spiritually. But then you also have a specific configuration of power to support that function. That is the Shein Shebia, that's the cerebellum in the back of the brain, 2 lobes. That is the Shein Shebia, the patriclan and matriclan divinities, energy that you inherited from your patriclan and matriclan ancestresses and ancestors. You wield that energy, you utilize that blended energy to execute your function. It comes from the mother's blood, the Mogya, which becomes Mojo in Hoodoo, and it comes from the father's blood. The term for father in Akan is Agya, often spelled Agya, Agya, and the father's deity is Agya bosom, also called the Ntoro, the Agya bosom. So from the Agya, the father's energy, you receive patriclan divinity's energy. From the mother's side is the Mogya, which is the blood of the mother, and you receive the energy of the matriclan divinity. So from the Mogya or Mojo and the Agya. Agya in Akan becomes Ja in Hoodoo, and Jack later becomes pronounced Jack in Hoodoo. This is where you get the Jack or the Jack Ball. In the Akan tradition, we have these amulets, and they have specific names. So, for example, the Jack or the Jack Ball is really the Jack or the Agya Ball. In Akan tradition, there's such amulet or actual bag, container of energy, and we're going to show an image of that on the front page when we were promoting the show. The image that you see on the channel, Blog Talk Radio channel for this particular show, you see an old image of one of those containers of energy from the Akan tradition, and then we show quote-unquote modern-day marketed Mojo bag on the left, and then we also show the game that's called Jacks, and then you have the little metal jacks, and then you have a ball, and then you have a bag. You throw the ball up, and then you grasp the jacks and so forth. You swipe them up, and then you catch the ball and all that. Where did that whole thing come from? Sometimes they will call them knuckle bones. They'll talk about ancient Greece and so forth. But then the Greeks will talk about they learned knuckle bones from the deity Thoth, who was actually Tahuti, Perversity in Akan, the divinity of divination, male divinity on the male side. Seshat is the female divinity of divine wisdom and divination on the female side. So, but that whole notion of the jack ball and the jacks being swiped up, and you have the little bag and so forth, that is a form of divination. Of course, anybody who casts divination casts shells, and then they swipe those shells up and cast them again. This is a divinatory practice. So when we were children playing with jacks and bouncing the ball and swiping up the jacks and so forth, we were engaged in the movements of oracular divination. So this whole jack ball or jack comes from ja and ja. Now let's look at this container that we showed an image of that we call jack from the term Agya in Akan, same term. What does that mean in the Akan tradition? What are these containers of energy that are fashioned in a specific way? Sometimes they're leather packets, sometimes they're cloth or flannel, and their spirits are poured on them. They're ritually prepared. They're dealing with medicine and so forth, protection, but they're also dealing with the wisdom that's transmitted from generation to generation, intergenerationally. Do we have such a thing in the Akan tradition? We do have that. So we're going to look at this publication by Georges Niangora Bua, The Akan World of Gold Weight. He was an Akan from Ivory Coast. If you look at the gold weights that you see, the little brass figures that you see in Akan culture of animals and different Adinkra symbols and so forth, these little brass figurines, instead of weighing gold dust with just little brass blocks, we use blocks to do so as little weights to weigh gold dust in the scale, put dust on one side, gold dust on one side, and then these different size little brass squares and so forth that weigh are different weights to determine how much gold dust is how much it is. But at the same time, we didn't just use plain square as weight. We began to incorporate our symbolism in these brass weights. So instead of just having a bland little brass weight, we would create them in the form of Adinkra symbols and other symbols. The entire cosmology of the culture woven into these various symbols. There are hundreds of Adinkra symbols, hundreds of these symbols using these brass gold weights in the form of animals and other symbols in plant life and mineral life and so forth, teaching all kinds of wisdom from the culture. Proverbial wisdom, in-depth, comprehensive knowledge of every aspect of creation. Symbols from the earth, symbols from the sky, animal life, Adinkra symbols, abstract symbols, all these various symbols. There are hundreds of them. They all have their own names, their own proverbs, but they're also used for divination practice. These symbols, like the Adinkra symbols, used in the same fashion that Veves are used in the Vodun tradition. Utilized on shrines, utilized on the bodies of people to draw in specific abosum, draw in specific ancestresses and ancestors. So, what we have in the Akan tradition, when you see these brass gold weights in these various sacred symbols, they're carried in a specific kind of bag. Within that bag, that's called, for example, a ja. In Ivory Coast, they call it a ja. In Ghana, because there are 9 million Akan people in Ivory Coast, 11 million Akan people in Ghana. In Ivory Coast, the Akan people call it ja. In Ghana, they have a couple of names. They call it Eja De. Adie means thing. Aja De or Eja De are the things of the Eja. It's also called Eja Pade. Eja Pade. Eja is talking about father, but it's also talking about inheritance from the father. What is passed on from the father. It's also talking about treasures of that which is passed on from the father that is invaluable. It's within this sacred bag, prepared with medicine. One of these bags, you'll see, it says these pictures, this picture shows 2 ja. So these ja bags. Ja bags or jack bags and so forth. The black spot on the one on the left is from sacrificial animals' blood. This packet symbolizes religion, ancestor worship, and the sum of human knowledge. The ja on the right has a cowrie, talking about a cowrie shell in Sewa, an old coin symbolizing the economic power of the reigning sovereign. So we have an AGYAPADE, an AGYAPADE, an Eja bag or container. AGYAPADE becomes Ja Pade, Cha Bale, Cha Bale, Jack Bale, Jack Bale, Jack Ball, and Jack Ball in Hoodoo. It is a container that carries the wisdom of all human knowledge. It's connected with ancestral communication. Animals' blood, sacrificial animal blood is treated on the bag, just like as we read in the piece, the Mojo bags and so forth are treated with spirit, liquor, and certain things that we had to utilize over here in the Western Hemisphere. If we didn't have a ram or something else, another animal to sacrifice, but we utilize other elements within nature to treat the specific container, this little shrine of energy, this little magnifier of ancestrally inherited energy that becomes a container of energy, a battery of that energy to be provoked and released at the right time. It's like you have a battery, and at some point you want to use the battery, so you put it in the device, and it can release the energy at the right time to enlighten or enliven whatever you're trying to stimulate. In the same fashion, we have these batteries, these spiritual batteries. We pour that energy, that potency into these containers, into these portable shrines, the AGYAPADE as well as the Moja bag and so forth. Pour that energy in there so it can be contained, so it can be released at the right time when we need an explosion of a specific figuration of energy to overcome a specific obstacle, or we need insight into a specific situation. We're utilizing these bags in the form of divination to communicate with our patriclan divinities, matriclan divinities, as well as our ancestresses and ancestors. The Mogya is the blood of the mother contained within these amulets and so forth, of these specific bags that are used and treated, communicating with the energy of the ancestresses and ancestors of the matriclan, as well as the Abosom deity that governs the matriclan. We can utilize that energy once provoked to defend ourselves or gain knowledge or insight into a specific path that we're going on. If we're trying to protect ourselves, evade, capture, escape from a plantation and so forth, communicate with these matriclan ancestors and ancestors for protection as well as guidance. In the same fashion, the AGYAPADE, Ja-Padie, Ja-Badie, Ja-Bali, Ja-Ball, Jack Ball, and so forth. This container of energy treated ritually that contains the sum of human knowledge transferred intergenerationally, blood inheritance and so forth, carries that energy that we can provoke, we can utilize, that we can access, defend ourselves, protect ourselves, and also gain insight to the proper way in which we need to move forward, whether we're trying to protect ourselves or just learn how to interact with one another in a harmonious fashion, learn how to procure medicine to heal our people, learn how to establish governmental structures that will support our people and mitigate disputes in a harmonious fashion so our nation doesn't fall apart as Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit people. These are the reasons that we use the Mogya bags or the Mojo bags connected to the ancestral energy of the Menstrual clan and the deities of the Menstrual clan and the AGYAPADE, Jack Ball, and so forth. These ritual bags, containers of energy to connect with the Patriclan divinity and the Patriclan Ancestresses and Ancestors for their unique guidance, wisdom, and power. So we have both. Another title of the AGYAPADE, for example, the AGYAPADE or the Jack Ball, as it's called in Hoodoo, AGYAPADE Akan. Another title of that is Sana. That's another title of that kind of bag. They would say, it's a, if you look in the dictionary, they'll say, well, that's the treasury or the purse of the king or the purse of the person, and it carries the, wealth of the person, but also the implements to deal with the knowledge of the clan and the knowledge of the lineage and so forth. And they call it sana, meaning a big bag, but the root is sa. The term nsa in Akan means, sa means to come to an end, the end of something, but nsa means hand, like your hand, which is, of course, at the end of your arm. So sa means to come to an end, the end of something is the hand. So when you look at your hand, you say that's an nsa. And, of course, the name of this bag is the sana. This is why a mojo bag or a jack ball is also called a mojo hand, or just a jack hand, or a conjure bag or a conjure hand. Why do we call the bag a hand? Because in our Akan tradition, the AGYAPADE is also called sana. The root of it is nsa, which means a hand. Of course, it's a hand bag, but it's a hand. So we translated the exact same ritual item from the Akan tradition. We preserved the actual name. We just pronounced it with a North American Akan dialect. Instead of saying AGYAPADE, we say JAPADE or JAPALIE or JAPADE, jack ball, and so forth. But then we also called it a hand because we translated it from our original language, nsa, which means a hand bag, hand container, ritual hand, and so forth. And then we called it a hand, a mojo hand, or a jack ball hand, or a jack hand, conjure hand, and so forth. So both names, both the connotations still the same proper context, but we're dealing specifically with Patriclan and Menstrual Ancestresses and Ancestors, Patriclan and Menstrual deities that govern our blood circle that we brought into the world with us. These are the specific forces in nature whose energy blends together that's unique to us that we must invoke in order to execute our function in the world. This is why it is said that the mojo bag or the jack ball and so forth is unique to every individual. Of course, this is only Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit people because the whites in our spring have no honored ancestresses and ancestors. They have no capacity to communicate with any deities, never have and never will. No Orisha, no Vodou, no Abosom, Ntorotu, Netaru have ever communicated with the whites in their offspring, and they never will. That includes white Europeans, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Asians, white Hindus, white Arabs. Spirit that they communicate with is nothing more than one of their dead criminal relatives that they are passing off as deity, or really just criminal dead crap. So, this is only dealing with our people. But we're talking about specifically the Patriclan and Menstrual energy that's unique to us, that blends with inside of us, just like the sperm and ovum blends together. You have your father, sperm cells from the father, they have their own lineage. Ovum cells from the mother, they have their own lineage. These two people at some point grow up, and then they at some point meet, and then they blend their blood circles together, and the sperm from the father, ovum cell from the mother unite to create that zygote, that oocyte. That's the first time that that specific sperm cell with those specific chromosomes united with this person from another family and blend together to create a brand new human being, a specific vessel for your spirit to enter into. And this is the first time that has taken place. But the spiritual force that animated the sperm cell, the patriclan divinity, and the spiritual force that animated the ovum cell, the matriclan divinity, their energy is also blended in a unique way, and you have access to that energy because you carried those patriclan and matriclan divinities with you into the womb. They were assigned to you before you even got into the womb by Nyamewa, Nyame, Amenet, and Amen, and then you brought them into the womb with you. Then you entered into that zygote, and eventually, weeks later, you were born. 40 weeks later, you were born. So, you have access to that unique blended energy, and that's the only energy you should be accessing because it's unique to you. You must utilize that specific configuration of energy to execute your function. That is wired within you. You don't just say, well, I'm a person of earth, and I'm just going to go out and imitate what other people do, and I'm going to go to the ocean and go here and go there, and the earth energy is for all people, and we just suck in all the energy. That's not what's taking place. We have deities who have possessed our people. And once those spirits possessed our people, transformed the DNA of our people, that transformed DNA is passed on through sperm and ovum cells when we have children, and we become magnets for the deities that first possessed our people. This is why we have transcarnational inheritance. We have a direct blood relation to deities, forces in nature, because they came from nature, entered into the bodies of our people, split the spirit of our people, got inside the bodies, and transformed ourselves. So we have a blood relation to the deity. They're in our family. And we have specific deity energy that has blended, and we must invoke that uniquely blended energy to execute our specific function in the world. That's why it is very direct related to transcarnational energy. It's not just some abstract, I'm going to pull the energy from the sun and do a ritual. Every Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit group can align with the sun, but there's a specific means by which we align with the sun of Afurakan as opposed to a Yoruba person. We have ritual prayers, ritual practices, sometimes different ritual dances and so forth, ritual implements, so we can pull in the energy based on our unique spiritual configuration in a different way than they pull in the energy. We're going to get to the same result of aligning that energy within us so we can utilize it in a radiant, powerful, explosive way to overcome obstacles and enlighten ourselves and so forth. But we have to do it based on who we are. It's just like someone taking in vitamin D from certain sources. We all need vitamin D. One person may be allergic to a certain kind of food, or you may need vitamin B, and some people might be allergic to blueberries or something like that. They may need to get the vitamin B from another source. We're still going to get the vitamin, but we have to get it based on who we are, based on our blood circle that's related to our migrations for thousands of years to different parts of the continent, blending blood circles with different Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit family, creating a specific kind of blood circle that receives certain kinds of nutrients in certain ways and rejects certain kinds of nutrients in other ways and gets the nutrients in a different fashion. So just like we have to respect our dietary taboos based on our blood circle, our lineage, our allergens, and so forth, we must respect spiritual taboos as well. And that's directly related to clan, and only the ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circles can show us that. So nobody from the continent, for example, can come over here and initiate us into hoodoo. They have no capacity to do that because they did not migrate here. They did not interface with the Earth Mother divinities here and forge a means by which we harmonize with that energy based on our blood circle, taking in specific kinds of nutrients and energy, develop certain kinds of taboos in this region of therefore the western part of the Earth Mother and so forth. They have not lived that experience or mastered that experience. Only our ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, who lived here, manifested that kind of experience, learned how to navigate their way through that kind of experience in harmony with the deities that govern the matriclan and patriclan, and they can pass that on to us through DNA, pass it on to us ritually when they possess us, communicate with us, and so forth. All right. So we want to look in the, and by the way, the term Ja, we talked about it, Ja means father in Akan. And of course, AGYAPADE is the Ja bag, or the inheritance from the father, and ritual amulet and so forth, and that's the same AGYAPADE or Jack Ball. And then, of course, the Mogya, energy from the mother, contained within that specific implement, ritual talisman, amulet, bag, container of energy, and all of that. Look, even in ancient Kemet, in the Mmusuo, the term Ja means father. It also means male, masculine, and the hieroglyphic symbol is not only a specific kind of bird, but you also see an erect phallus showing that it's talking about male, masculine, the one who begets, talking about the father. So the term Cha, meaning father, the one who begets and transmits, as shown in the Mmusuo, is the term Agya, meaning father, the one who begets in Akan, and it comes all the way down to HOODOO, talking about the Ja, all which comes from the Cha, AGYAPADE, and so forth. All right, so we're going to look in the chat room. Looks like we have some comments and questions. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, hit the number 1. As we're pulling that up, we're going to pull out one more section in one of our publications that we need to go over. Give me a second while I pull that up. And we'll put the link for that in the chat room as well. Articles that we have published. Just give me 1 second. All right. One of the articles we published 20 books. We've also published over 80 articles dealing with various aspects of ancestral religion, culture, truth story, nation building, and so forth. We have an article series on the Afurakani, the deities, the Abosom, and Akan culture that govern, and just in general that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern the 7-day week. One of those deities is Abena. She governs Benada, which is Tuesday, Abenada. The planet Benna, or Abenada, Abena is also called Mars by the white lunar spring, the red planet, the war planet, and so forth. The male deity is Benna. Female divinity is Abena. In ancient Kemet, that is Heru Benna, or Heru Bedat, Heru Behudet, also Bedeti, Bedat, called Beda, or Benna in Akan, and also Benni in Akan, and a title of Sekhmet, also Sechimet or Sechima in ancient Kemet. She's called Sechima in Akan. She's called Bedat in ancient Kemet. She's also called Abena in Akan. We go into detail about that in this article. Any female born on Abenada Tuesday is called Abena. Males born on Tuesday are called Kwa Bena. So if you hear somebody named Kwa Bena or Abena, you know they were born on Abenada Tuesday. She is Sechima Sekhmet. She is Iyami Abeni in Yoruba, Nyokwe Anano in Vodun. Now, we talk about her operating through the planet Mars. She governs the lymphatic system, that military structure, law enforcement structure within the divine body. That's why she's a warrioress divinity in ancient Kemet and Kanat, lioness and so forth, waging war. Principal agentess of divine hate. It's like Benna is the male force of divine hate. She is the female force of divine hate. The contracted pole of order, law or love is the expansive pole of order. And we have our book, Modernity, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate, proving that hate is a divine force in creation. Male and female deities of hate are Benna and Abena, Heru, Behudet, and Sekhmet. Male and female forces of divine law are Ma'a and Ma'a. And law and love is the same word in our ancient language. So we're going into detail about that. But there's a key here. She not only is the warrioress, the lymphatic system in the great divine body, she governs your lymphatic system in your body, destroying disordered cells for the maintenance of the rest of the body. Divine hate, rejection, repulsion, destruction of cancerous cells and negative entities for the preservation of the divinely ordered body. It's divine hate, rejection, repulsion. She governs the lymph in your physical body. She is the source of lymphatic immunity within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, and thus within creation. So she spills blood through warfare and so forth. She's also a divine healeress. Her priests and priestesses are called Sunu, which means physicians, healers, healeresses, and so forth. She spills blood through war. It's like the lymphatic system cells are killing these cancerous cells. But she also spills blood through menstruation. Setchima Sekhmet is the female force, the deity of menstruation. This is why she's called Setchima and AKYISAN. She's also called Setchima and Akan, and the term Setchima is also the term for menstruation in the Akan language. We also have another term, Abra, which means the menses as well. And every girl who goes through our rites of passage, womanhood training, upon the onset of menarche is called either Setchima or Abrani, which is Abra, a title of Abena, and so forth. So we're going into all of that, but we wanted to show something specifically with regard to the whole notion of that blood. Now, the Asechima, or the menstruation, or the Obra cycle, the menstruation cycle, the cleansing that occurs via the Obra, or the menses cycle, within the Afuraitkaitnit female is not only a physical rejuvenation process, but also a spiritual cleansing. In our Akan culture, women who are in the Obra state, the menstrual cycle, are called Obra Fo, Abena Fo, and will sometimes dwell in the Obra dying, Obra house, the dwelling house of the Obra, when females are all sharing that same cycle, dwelling that, take part in the dwelling in that specific building during parts of the cycle in order to harmonize their asunsun, their spirits, with the deity, the abosom, Abena, Sekhmet, as well as with Asasiya Fu and Asasiya, the earth mothers, and with one another as human shrines of these abosom. Now, Sekhmet is referred to as the red lady. You see her wearing the red garments as well as the red disc upon her head, sometimes the red and white dress as well. These are these erythrocytes and lymphocytes, these red blood cells, white blood cells, and so forth. We quote from a text of ancient Kemet when Ra brings Setchima Sekhmet into being and she destroys the negative men and women and so forth and massacres them and so forth. We show all of that. Then we want to get down to this other piece. All right. So we show the inner core of Asase, the inner core of Earth. And you'll that hot, molten inner core of Earth, that fiery inner core, and you see Setchima Sekhmet in partnership with Ptah. You see Ptah and Sekhmet, husband and wife. Ptah operating through the innermost core of Earth. Setchima Sekhmet operating through the inner core as well. We show the inner core of Asasi Earth averages about 9,800 degrees Fahrenheit and so forth. But then we also show the inner bone, the red and yellow marrow of the inner bone. The blood is the creative fire, the fuel within the stone, within the bone. So the Mogya, Mo meaning stone, Ja meaning fire. That's because that's the root of the term Ja. You have the male fire, the female fire. The Mogya is the fire within the stone, that marrow within the bones and so forth. That's that female fire, the Mogya, and then you have the Etja, the father's fire and so forth. So you have that fire within the bones, within the marrow of the bone. In the marrow of the bones, you have the erythrocytes that are developed within the marrow of the bone. also find that the stem cells for the endometrium are generated within the bone marrow. The endometrium is the lining that is shed during menstruation. So Sechima is at the center or the core of Earth, with Ptah fashioning that fire within the core. She's a fiery, they say her breath is the hot wind of the desert and so forth. She's a fiery goddess with the fiery disc, red disc of the sun, as well as planet Binah on her head, the fiery warrioress spirit, fire within the bones and so forth. Within the earth, within the core of earth, that's the fire there. Within your earth, which is within your bones, is the marrow within the bones, and deep within the marrow within the bones, those erythrocytes give rise to the stem cells of the endometrium. The endometrium is the lining that is shed during menstruation. It's a direct connection between the stem cells of the endometrium within the bone marrow and within that lining that is shed by Sechima. So she's in the bones, but she's also in the endometrium. And then we show some images of lymphocytes, and then adinkra symbols associated with the red eyes of Sekhmet and so forth, and they're in the same form of these erythrocytes. And then we also show the red dress of Sekhmet, which has the same patterns as well. So we show that to show that connection between the Mogya, the fire within the bone, connected with that divinity, female divinity of fire, connected with that menstruation. You also find that same piece in the hoodoo tradition, when you have the woman who has what is called a certain kind of mojo or Mogya, which is the nature sac. Misnomer is the nation sac. We're talking about the nature sac, which controls the virility of the male when it's utilized in a ritual fashion that the woman uses during the intercourse process to control the virility of the male. And if you get on the wrong side of the woman, she can create that specific kind of mojo or Mogya, the nature sac, and destroy the male's virility. And the males fear that and so forth, so she has a great deal of power with regard to that. There's another connection between Ptah and Sekhmet. Of course, he's the fire within the inner core of earth. She's the fire in the inner core as well. We also said she is the governs the lymphatic system, of course, that, law enforcement system within the body. We also talk about the organ within which Ptah operates in total is the brain. Of course, he's in the limbus, and then cerebral cortex is like his crown, that white fleshy area, or the house within which Ptah dwells, and he wears the skull cap, which is the limbus within the brain and so forth. He operates through that formative power of the brain. His energy is deeply rooted within the body, manifests the formative power through the brain. So you see Ptah with the skull cap, the limbus and all of that. But then you also find that the lymphatic system, recently they've discovered the lymphatic system doesn't just stop in the lower part of the body. And we'll pull up something real quick. And you can Google this, brain lymphatic system discovery. We just want to bring this out because it's very important with regard to the relationship of Ptah and Sekhmet. You can find that this is very recent, over the past year. You can find this if you just Google brain lymphatic system discovery. Scientists find the brain's missing pipe. Throw out the textbooks, and missing link are words rarely heard anymore in science, but that's what researchers around the world are saying about the recent discovery of microscopic lymphatic vessels connecting the brain to the immune system. That physical link was long thought absent, and founding scientists who study neurological disorders with an immune component. The vessels were found in mice by accident by University of Virginia researchers who published their results in Nature. The lymphatic vessels, which piggyback on blood vessels, distribute immune system immune cells to tissues to fight infection and carry fluid away from the tissues to dispose of cellular waste. This complex drainage system has been found in nearly every part of the human body, but not until now in the brain. So up until last year, the whites and their offspring did not know that there were lymphatic vessels that were in the brain that connected the brain to the immune system. However, we've always understood that Ptah operating through the brain and Sekhmet operating through the lymphatic system are husband and wife. They're husband and wife in ancient Kemet, they're husband and wife in Yoruba, husband and wife in Vodun and Akan and so forth. Ptah and Sechima, the brain and in the lymphatic system. They've always been married. That's in our cosmology, that's in our culture. They possess, they communicate to us their connection to one another. We've written articles about this, and now the whites and their offspring very lately come and quote-unquote discover that there are actually lymphatic cells in the brain that connect the brain to the rest of the lymphatic system and the immune system. The lymphatic cells in the brain that connect with the brain is the union of the Ptah and Sekhmet in the brain, in the head region, just like deep within the bones, you find the union of the Ptah and Sechima, that Mogya, that female fire within the marrow, and the Agya, the male fire, and so forth. Deep within the bones, that fiery energy that we draw from the mother's side, the Menstrual clan, the patriclan, the father's side, and so forth. We utilize that blended energy to affect a positive result. And we contain that energy within the Mogya bag, later in Hoodoo called the Mojo bag, as well as the AGYAPADE, later in Hoodoo called the JAPADE, 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 Ball, or Jack Ball, and so forth. So we just want to bring that information out. And then we also have a 3-part series on Sekhmet, Cobra Bosom, menstruation goddess, and we talk about this whole notion of how that menstrual Mogya, menstrual blood can be used ritually to affect specific results. That's true of the Akan tradition, it's true all across the continent. And of course, when people understand hoodoo and people using menstrual blood for specific ritual practices, it, acquire some influence over someone or to attack someone, to cause the death of someone, criminals and so forth, has been happening ever since we've been in America. Even people who have not, of course, studied anything, read anything about hoodoo, read anything about ancient Kemet, read anything about any of that stuff, but just communicated with their ancestresses and ancestors. They direct them at certain times in their cycles to gather some of that menstrual Mogya, menstrual blood, utilize it in amulets, utilize it for medicinal purposes, utilize it for offensive and defensive purposes. And our people have been doing that, young women as well as older women, since we have been here in America. And we still utilize the same term. Mojo and Jack is Mogya and Agya from the Akan tradition. Okay, so we just want to look in the chat room real quick. See if we have any questions in the chat room. If you have a question or a comment, you can hit the number 1 on the phone line so that we can see that your hand is raised. Now, and one of the comments in the chat room. Okay, so one question. Yes, okay, so yes, that's Mojo working by Dr. Katrina Hazard. Okay. And is this the same as the 7 Sibyls of Mami Wata info, 7 Menstrual clans? So, when they're talking about Sibyls, first of all, they're talking about priestesses in the ancient, or less ancient, but, in ancient North Afuraitkaitnit, and some of our people went up into Southern Europe, and then later Sebele being Sibyl and so forth, and some of those priestesses in Southern Europe, and eventually the whites and offspring invade and they come in contact with our people and they recognize these women just like they see our priestesses on the continent. We carry that energy and that practice in Southern Europe, and they see our priestesses as oracles. They see male priests as oracles as well. So, and they began to call them sibyls and everything else. So, it's associated. Sometimes they're just talking about specific women who are priests and priestesses. When you're talking about these original 7 females that going back to the 7 het heru. When you see the 7 het heru in the form of 7 female divinities, sometimes in the form of females, sometimes in the form of 7 cows, and of course connected to those 7 stars. That star system is a constellation of energy that impacts our solar system, impacts us as well, because there's feminine spirits that animate these forces. Then you also, when you look, like for example, in the wintertime, the most dominant constellation at nighttime is the Sa constellation, so-called Orion. That's the abode of Alsar in the sky, and you'll see the belt of Orion and so forth, the 3 stars in the belt of Orion, but that's, within the Sa, or Sahu constellation, as we call it in Kemet. In Yang Kainten, and Akan is the name of that constellation. And Afuraitkaitnit, the old woman or ancient woman and her children, that's the name of Pleiades in the Akan tradition. But that Yang Kainten, or that Sahu constellation in the Akan tradition that they call Orion, the 12 stars who are the attendants of Alsar. Those 12 forces impact our solar system, impact our sun, impact the earth, they impact us. You can see those stars. That means the light is shining across space and hitting you. Those beams of light are affecting your spirit body. You can communicate with the spirit that animates each one of those star systems. But they're one of them that governs us in dealing with the patriclans and so forth. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about deities. We're not just talking about the stars, but the spiritual forces that animate the stars, just like there's a spiritual force that animates different parts of the Earth Mother, spiritual forces that animate the sun, spiritual forces that animate the black substance of space, spiritual forces that animate the planets and so forth. There's spiritual forces that animate the different star systems, and they also, some of those same spiritual forces will operate on Earth, animating different rivers and so forth. These are the same deities. They have a stellar home or abode. They have a solar abode. They have an abode on Earth. They have an abode or shrine within your body. So on every level, in your body, there's a shrine for these deities. On the Earth Mother, there's a shrine for them. Within the solar orb, there's a shrine for them. Within certain star constellations, there are shrines for them. And so this is what we're doing. This is the difference between the 12 forces and the 7 female forces. They are actually power generators of their energy in creation, in space. Those 7 stars of Afuraitkaitnit, the old woman and her children, so-called Pleiades, 7 het heru, and then the 12 attendants of Sahu, of Yang Kainten, of so-called Orion, and so forth. In New Orleans, there was talk of the 7 sisters whom engaged in hoodoo practices. Do you think there's a correlation to the 7 magic clans? So yes, there will be a correlation to 7 magic clans, but whenever you do even just the 7 sisters, like when they talk about the 7 het heru, those 7, and we show in the book, we show them in the form of 7 cows, but then we also show, and I'll give you the page real quick. Look on page 37 in the Okra complex. From the stele of the priest Amenemhat, we also show them in the form of 7 female divinities, human female divinities, whereas in the Papyrus of Ani, we show them in the form of the 7 cows. They're called the 7 het heru. However, in India and other places, they call them the 7 sisters. So this is where you get the notion of the 7 sisters. Now, sometimes there were 7 sisters working together and so forth in New Orleans, but beyond that basic 7 sisters, when you go back to the original 7 sisters, what you're talking about are these 7 ancestresses, who govern the 7 matriclans in our Akan culture, but those 7 ancestresses who are the heads of the 7 matriclans are governed by the 7 female abosom, the 7 het-heru divinities. So there are 7 great ancestresses who head up the 7 clans, and every Akan person can connect themselves to one of those 7 women, blood-wise. But those 7 females who are the heads of the 7 matriclans, they were governed by those 7 female deities. And those are the original 7 sisters, those 7 het-heru. So yes, it's all connected. Okay. So, okay. So would it be safe to say that your abosom would dictate whether you may be a hoodoo priest, priestess, and if so, would the ancestresses guide you to the root system of healing, roots, mojo bags, etc.? Would you need to be taught by someone familiar with hoodoo? So, yes. Now, just like in the Akan tradition and various traditions on the continent, and wherever we are, yes, the abosom, as we read a proverb before, it says, it is the abosom who shows or teaches the okomfo, the priest or priestess, how to spin around or to twirl. Meaning, when a person goes to a ritual, even before they get to a ritual, and all of a sudden this person who's never been possessed before gets possessed by a divinity. And then they begin to spin around, or they begin to dance and spin around or operate in a different fashion. They didn't sit around just one day going to spinning class and learning how to spin around and dance. The deity got inside of them, made them spin around, twirl, and so forth. The deity operating through their body leads them to the forest to pick herbs at a certain time of year, a certain time of day or night, to heal people and so forth, and is teaching them the culture. That is the establishment of a priesthood, priestesshood, when we convey what the abosom taught when they were possessed and what the ancestresses and ancestors taught while they were possessed. We convey that to the people and transmit that knowledge without profaning it. That is the perpetuation of the priesthood that was established and priesthood that was established by the deities themselves possessing the people. So we are called in that fashion, possessed by the abosom, and sometimes there are indications of that. So, for example, when someone is born with a caul or a veil over their face in hoodoo, they're known to be, okay, this person was born to be a seer. That's an indication from the Nsamampo and from the abosom, the ancestral spirits and the deities, that this person was sent into the world to be a seer. They can see between the physical world and the spirit world and so forth. From birth, they were already shown and given that indication. Sometimes they have specific markings on their bodies, specific birthmarks in the form of specific symbols or animal totems or sacred symbols that come from the Nsamampo, and we know they have been marked to go into their profession. Sometimes it's when they get a little bit older, they're young adults and so forth, and they become possessed by the abosom, possessed by the Nsamampo. They have been called by the divinities to learn. Now, if we have people within the community who have maintained tradition, then they can nurture that development. They can nurture that priesthood, and so forth, the conjureress, the healeress, and so forth. If we do not have people in the immediate environment in the family who have been engaged because they've been brainwashed with Christianity or white culture and so forth, the abosom, the nananom and samampo will teach the person themselves, just like they taught the first priest or priestess. How was the first person initiated as a priest or priestess when there weren't any priests or priestesses yet to initiate people? It begins with the possession of the deities themselves. And that has always occurred, and it occurs every day in America, and it's been happening ever since we've been here. It was what empowered us and guided us to the kind of knowledge and understanding how to utilize herbs and roots and so forth to heal ourselves, but also for chemical and biological warfare to eradicate our enemies, wage war against the whites and offspring, and bring it into enslavement. So, yes, they will direct you in that fashion. And we did a broadcast on HOODOO Mafo, the hoodoo man, hoodoo woman, priests and priestesses in the Akan tradition going into some details about that. Okay. And we also, let me see. I want to make sure we didn't miss that other. Now, we also want to mention, for people who came in a little bit later, on June 24th, we're having our Ojira Mayn Afashe, Ojira Mayn, the Purified Nation, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere conference, our Ojira Mayn conference, June 24th here in Washington, D.C. It's from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. It is a Fida, a Friday. It's an Afidam, Fida, Sacred Ancestral Friday. It's 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's a free conference open to our people, Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit people only, of course. We'll have a number of presenters dealing with various aspects of nation building and Amaniye, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit nationism, the purification of nationalism. We'll have a number of presenters. We'll have a marketplace, AGYA marketplace all day. If you would like to vend at the event, we have a few more spaces. We provide a 6-foot table with 2 chairs, $30 for the vending space for the whole day. Go to the Ojira Mayn Afashe page on our website to register, to download the vending application, registration application. We will be giving away a free copy of one of our books, the Ojira Mayn Afashe publication, to everyone who comes to the event, just like we've done at all of our events. We give away a free copy of one of our books to everyone who comes to our event, no matter what city we're in. We do not charge a speaker's fee. We don't charge an admissions fee for any presentation that we do in any city. Always free to the Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit community and open to our people only, of course. And then when you come to the free event, we always give away a free copy of one of our 20 books to everyone in attendance. So notwithstanding whether or not you have any funds, you come to a free presentation and you leave with a free book. And we're going to continue that process as well here at this conference. We're going to give away a free copy of the Ojira Mayn Afashe book, which will be released just prior to the conference, beginning of the conference. We're still working on that book right now, and it's going to be ready before conference. So, but for those who are not able to make it, if you'd like to support the work we are doing, we have published 20 books. If you would like to support that information, the 20 books range between $8 and $11. You can order those, 1 or more books. Any order of 5 books, the first 5 books is $40 for 5 books. That is a 20% off discount. The first 5 books, or any combination of 5 books. We have that special going on with any combination of the first or of five of our books. $40 for 5 books. So when you go to the publications page on the website, you can click the button that says Nhoma Enum, first 5 books for $40, that 20% discount. Just let us know in the comment section which 5 books you would like to receive. You can either receive the first 5 books of our set, or you can pick whichever 5 you would like. Any combination, doesn't matter. And just place that in the comment section in the notes when you're checking out in PayPal, so we know which of those 5 books to send you. That is one of the specials that we have as we're raising funds to cover some of the operating expenses for this conference, including some travel expenses for a couple of presenters who may be able to come out and need the assistance with that, as well as the operating expense. So the first 5 books are $40. We also have 30% off for any order of 10 books or more. The first 10 books is $66 for 10 books. And, of course, we have the same discount all the way through the entire 20-book set. Is $131 for 20 books. So whether you bought 1 book for $8 or more than 1 book that supports the work we're doing, you get the immediate benefit of receiving the book, softcover book, in the mail, of course. But then you can also receive the long-term benefit of supporting the community. We've given away over 860 free softcover books at our various events, and we're going to continue that process at this conference because that's part of our ancestral mandate. All of the ebooks of our 20 books, versions of our books, all ebooks are free download. So if people don't have any funds and they want to read any one of our 20 books, you can download those books for free. But then we also publish and print our own books in-house on our own printers, and the softcover versions range between $8 and $11. Most of them are either $9 and $10. And you can purchase the softcovers as well, and you can receive those. We can ship those out to you as well. So this is a way, no matter what economic situation our people are in, we have something for them. We also have released the information for no quadefo distributors option. If you would like to work, generate income for yourself immediately, notwithstanding your prior work history, you can begin immediately being an independent entrepreneur, working for yourself, selling our 20 books. You can pick whatever combination you would like to sell. Our books only range between $8 and $11, so when you sell them to your clients, they're very inexpensive. Most of them are $9 or $10. They typically sell themselves. We have books talking about the origin of the term Africa, Afuraitkaitnit, shown in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs. Books like HOODOO proving that Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael are all fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any race or in any form. We have Koko Bo, proving that dissexuality, homosexuality never existed and was never accepted in ancient Kemet or our ancestral culture in general. The divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality found in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs, in the language, in the culture, and so forth. We have the origin of the term yoga, Kara Kasa, the origin and nature of the chakra, showing that yoga and chakra come from and Kara in ancient Kemet. Many publications, origin of the term God, and just a number of different publications. More means dead. Information that is prior to our publishing it was unknown. Groundbreaking research. So when people see those titles and see that information, the books sell themselves. So if you like to begin to work immediately, you can do that. Going to the publications page, you'll see the No Quadefo video and distributor information document. All the information is there. You can start right away. When we talk about nation building, we must have an option within our Ojira mind, the purified nation, to be able to give an option of employment, self-employment for anybody, any Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person, no matter what their economic situation is. And so we have that option, and we have some people who are distributing already. We want as many distributors as possible. So you can start that process immediately. All right, we're going to go to the phone line right quick. Get Chill on the phone line, number 3289. You had a question or a comment?
Yes, Mmusuo, Brother Kwesi.
Joe, what's up?
My question is, well, when I was born with a veil, and when I was a little girl, I was able to see spirits, but, just from the conditioning of over time of being told, I wasn't really seeing anything, and just the fear that I began to gather as I got older, a lot of that has dissipated. It doesn't really happen in that way directly anymore. In dreams, things come to me, but I would like to know what is a way in which to begin to recall the gifts that we've been given or gifted when we incarnate. And my other question is it possible to for spirit to move through us or to have some kind of past life remembrance from it being medically or chemically induced? And by that I mean I broke my ankle as a child, and when I went to the hospital I was put under anesthesia, and I wasn't myself. The things that I was saying and when the things that I began to remember, it's like it wasn't from this current incarnation. So I've always wondered about that and wanted to find context for that experience.
Okay, definitely, yes, and a very good question. So first, yes, so it's very common in this culture for children who are born with a caul, with a veil, and even sometimes if they're not born with a caul or veil, but they still have the capacity for clairvoyance, or clairaudience, or clairsentience, seeing beyond the physical, hearing beyond the physical, feeling beyond the physical, and so forth, clairalience, clairgustance, smelling and tasting, and clairequilibrance and clairtemience, all that, experiencing beyond the physical. It starts off when we're young because that's how we came in the world. Then this culture, conditions you to suppress that, as you were saying, and it's suppressed and you force it down because, people ridicule it or they dismiss it or they even threaten certain people, like, you're going to go into a mental health institution if you continue to talk about this. And many of our people who end up in mental health institutions or on medication, saying therapists and so forth, they're simply people who are receptive, who can see ancestral spirits, hear them and feel them, because nobody else can. They're, talking and taking medication, or some of them will take it just to try to deaden their nerves. So hopefully it'll stop the communications from coming so quickly, because they have no way to negotiate these communications and sanction them. And since nobody else is seeing it, then it makes them depressed because they feel isolated and alone and everything else. And then sometimes they may even communicate with ancestral spirits or non-relatives who are not in their best interest, and they don't know what to do about it. So, and just real quick, for those who are on the line, there's 90 seconds left in the online version of the broadcast. If you would like to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you must call in, because after 11 o'clock, if you're just listening online, it will cut off. So you have a little bit more than a minute to call in. Call-in number 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. You can see the number on the Blog Talk Radio channel, 657-383-0635. You have about a minute to call in so you can get on the phone before it cuts off online. Everybody who's on the phone prior to it cutting off online, you'll be able to hear the rest of the broadcast. So yeah, that's so that's very common, and it's very important for people not to, be alarmed. What happens is it becomes suppressed. So, and it's unconscious suppression, but it's still a suppression, because the Mmusuo still communicate, right? And most of them still communicate. But if we suppress it because we've been conditioned to do so, then we're just kind of like putting our hands over our ears, or we're just talking loud and, trying not to hear it. And that becomes a habit. And it becomes so habitual that we continue to do that. So the way to crack open and break through that suppression, the number one way through ritual practice is the establishment of an ancestral shrine. You're rededicating yourself to reconnecting with your divine function and communicating with those ancestresses and ancestors who were assigned to guide you throughout the course of your life in this, in the world. So the establishment of an ancestral shrine is the first step and primary means by which you begin to make that reconnection. They continue to communicate with you in dream because you're not actively suppressing, you're consciously suppressing and even unconsciously, so to speak, while you're awake, because you're habitually doing that. When you fall asleep, you're not exercising that same kind of willpower, so to speak, so it's easier for them to get in and get out. So the establishment of Ancestral Shrine, and when you look on our page, Ancestral Shrine Communication, if you go to the Nanasom page or some of the other, even the front page, you scroll down, you'll find Nkommere, Nkommere, Ancestral Shrine Communication. We also did a broadcast where we went through that article and 3 other articles, all focused on Ancestral Shrine Communication. And that article has a step-by-step process to establish an ancestral shrine, even a ritual prayer with, translation in the language and the audio link so you can hear that. All of that is in there connected. And then that ties into the second part of the question. Just like when you fall asleep, you're not actively sanctioning every single thought that comes in and out, and the Mmusuo are more free to be able to communicate without you shutting it down habitually. The same thing happens, of course, when you are artificially sedated, because you're not able to think. Just like somebody, if they're given truth serum or something, or on drugs or something, and then they're they're less sanctioning. They're free, and the things that come in and out of their mind is not controlled through habit. So when you're placed under sedation, you're not regulating your thoughts. You're not sanctioning every single thing that comes in and out. You're not placing habitual judgments on everything that comes in and out, so it's more free-flowing, and then you can, it's like dreaming, so to speak. You freed yourself up. Now, the way to do that, naturally, of course, is to begin to engage in ritual practice, to break through and get rid of that old conditioning, wipe that old conditioning away, open yourself to listen to the direct ancestresses and ancestors of your blood circle who were assigned to you to guide you throughout the course of your life. But yes, when you do get sedated, whether it's artificial or you engage in ritual practice to quote-unquote take yourself under, then the energy is more free-flowing, the communication is more free-flowing, and then you will have those experiences, whether it's what's going on right now, what is unfolding as we speak, and then you can see what's unfolding. It's like the Mmusuo can see us. It's kind of like slow motion. It's kind of like you see a baby crawling towards a table about to grab a ball. They're moving kind of slow. You know what they're doing. You know what their aim is. You can run in front of them, grab the ball, and run back behind them before they get to the table because they're moving slow. And we kind of move kind of slow with regard in relation to the spirit realm. And some also see what's unfolding. They see what path we're on, what decisions we've made, and what's going to unfold because of the kind of decisions we've made, what lane we have placed ourselves in. They can step in and show us, if you change lanes, this is what's going to happen. If you don't, this is what you're going to run into. So that's what's happening with regard to that kind of communication. So when you communicate with them, they can show you what's happening, what's unfolding, whether you get sedated, artificially, or you engage in ritual practice. You can see what's taking place, what's unfolding, the nature of the things that are happening right now, as well as what's happened in your past. It's like you can remember what happened when you were 7 or 8 years old. You're alive. You were alive before you came into the world. You were a spirit. You lived in the previous lifetime. You have a memory of everything that you've ever gone through for thousands of years. It is embedded within and encoded within your krawa, your soul, the divine consciousness. So you have access to it. It's like a computer has access to everything. You just need to know the, codes to be able to get into the memory of the computer, but everything is stored in the memory. It hasn't gone anywhere. So we have access to all of that, and through the ritual practice, dealing with the Mmusuo on one hand, your ancestresses and ancestors, but also dealing with your own kra, your soul, which is a deity in and of itself. That information is there. But it starts off with that ritual practice.
Ashe. Merase, Brother Kwesi.
Okay. So, and that is very key because that happens with our people on a regular basis, a large percentage of our people. There are many people who would be priests who are now on, Abilify or Risperdal or different psychotropic medications because they can see, they can hear, and so forth. They become depressed because of that, end up in mental institutions and everything else. And if we had a culture, which we do now because we've reestablished this, then they would understand they actually have a place in society. They have a specific role in Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit society, and those skills, that capacity that they have to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, balance time beyond the physical is valuable and needs to be utilized for the benefit and the well-being of the Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit community as well as for the person individually and their family. So that's very key for anybody who's going through that kind of, situation, as well as family members or friends who are going through specific things. Very often, unless they have some traumatic brain injury or some real physical injury, those things dealing with depression or so-called mental illness and things like that, it's not something physical where they took some drug and it destroyed brain cells or something like that. If that hadn't happened, it's typically a spiritual disalignment in some fashion that can be realigned. But even if it's a physical problem, very often it can be taken care of physically as well as spiritually as well. All right. So we just want to make sure we didn't miss anything else in the chat room. Okay, so we can end the broadcast here. We will be back on tomorrow for Ojida. Again, we will be having our conference. We look forward to connecting with everyone June 24th, which is a Feed Our Friday. Please share the information. The Ojida Mayn, Afashe, Purified Nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit People in the Western Hemisphere Conference Festival. It is Amaniye Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Nationism, the purification of nationalism. So we did a broadcast detailing that. You can check that out. And we'll be dealing with that on a regular basis leading up this week as well as next week leading up to the conference. Again, if you'd like to support the work we're doing, please purchase the softcover book, and you can become an entrepreneur, independent, no quadrifold distributor if you would like to begin to generate additional income or just income in general. So again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's it.